what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com alongside Mike Johnson today. We're talking about 5 questions that we need to learn going through spring football. But first, man, what's up, Mike? How you been, man?
I've been doing good, man. Just over here hanging out in Atlanta, calling some of these Birmingham Iron games and getting geared up for spring football for the 8A game. I'm going to get a chance to go to a couple of the scrimmages throughout spring practice, so real jacked up about that. But other than that, man, just doing good, hanging out.
Yeah, you know, as we move closer to spring practice, and in fact, Alabama will have now their first practice here on March 8th, and then they'll pick up again on March 18th, followed by Alabama's Pro Day. We're going to talk about on today's show 5 things that we need to learn going into the spring season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I think a good place to start out with is the linebacker position. I talked about this earlier when we were talking about the linebacker previews, which you can find right here on our YouTube channel or go read about on BamaInsider.com. But when we look at the linebackers, who needs to step up at that position particularly? And let's start with the inside backers. Who do you feel needs to step up at that inside linebacker position? Because as you know, Alabama does lose Mack Wilson, who declared early for the NFL draft. So let's start there.
Well, I think the easy thing to do is look at a guy like Joshua McMillan and say, okay, he's played some snaps. He's an older guy. He's somebody that is at least reliable. He can step into that role. You know, you're not going to get many mental mistakes out of a guy like that. And obviously, Coach Saban and this new defensive staff will trust somebody like that in that role. But I think you look at a higher upside and really spring ball. That's what this was built for. Guys that come into the program a little bit late, guys that are younger, guys that haven't stepped on the field much. All of a sudden, those guys do get a few reps last year. You see them on special teams. You see them flying around. They get a chance to learn the defense. And spring ball is really where you get to flourish. Joshua McMillan, who says, you know what? I'm putting my foot down. I've been here long enough. It's my time to shine. I'm going to fly around and make some plays. It's kind of just finding that balance. I mean, I saw it a lot back in my tenure. You know, guys like Drew Davis starting at right tackle and having to fend off a guy like DJ Fluker, who was a 5-star signee. It's hey, you know, who's going to make less mistakes? And who has that upside of physicality really to point to in that middle linebacker position? So there's going to be a lot of influx, but I think really as fans we should be watching to see who steps on that field and really who Coach Saban starts to trust towards the end of spring ball.
Yeah, certainly a big position battle as we move forward. Of course, on the other side at the inside linebacker position, you have Dylan Moses, who's returning inside linebacker who had a monster season last year, 86 tackles, should be the signal caller. What do you like about Dylan Moses, and what do you want to see from him moving forward this spring?
Well, he has that physicality, but he also has the speed, and that's this new era type of linebacker when you have somebody that can really thump but can also fly sideline to sideline. And he's going to get a chance to do that. I know we're going to talk about Steve Sarkeesian's offense coming up here in a little bit. He's going to get a chance to really showcase that speed, and that's what makes him so unique. Really that speed from the inside linebacker position where you get everybody really plugged in place. And now he said, you know what? I got a nose for the football. You take that double team. You take that double team. I'm going to fly downhill. I'm going to fly towards the hashes. That's what Dylan Moses really brings. And the more you understand the Nick Saban defense, the faster you can play and the more you can fly around. And I expect Dylan Moses to make a ton of progress from last year to this year.
He's Mike Johnson. My name is Kyle Henderson. We're going to have a call-in show as we move forward in the spring ball. So the number is 205-686-3604. In the meantime, you can call. You can leave a voicemail. We'll play it on our next show. But we want you to know that this is going to be a call-in show moving forward. Mike Johnson, former All-American with Alabama, also played with the Atlanta Falcons. My name is Kyle Henderson, managing editor at BamaInsider.com. All the coverage back on BamaInsider.com. Breaking down 5 questions as we head into the spring season. Mike, as we move forward with our questions, the center position. I mean, a couple years ago, you had Bradley Bozeman, very seasoned. Last year, you had Ross Pierce-Baker. He slid over from the guard position to take over center, did a great job last year. Who's going to be this year? I mean, is Chris Owens ready to be that guy? What's your take on Chris Owens in the center position for Alabama?
Well, Chris Owens is one of those guys when you talk to anybody inside the locker room, and really Ross Pierce-Baker was one of those guys who really jumped all over the Chris Owens train down at the Senior Bowl when he's been gotten a chance to talk about some of the other players and some of the other positions along that offensive line moving towards the future, who really takes up and plays that Ross Pierce-Baker role. Everybody I've talked to around the program is so happy about Chris Owens and really the strides he's made, not only physically in the weight room, he's gained a little bit of weight, he's gotten a little bit stronger, but he's also a guy that mentally seems to really understand what this program is trying to do and what they're trying to do along the offensive line. So talking to people inside the locker room, talking to some of the coaches, and talking to some of the people that know these players, Chris Owens is expected to take on a huge role for this offensive line moving forward. And I can't tell you how big that is. When you're missing a few pieces from last year, maybe up to 3 pieces from last year, depending on what you're going to get out of Deonte Brown, having a guy like Chris Owens who's ready to step into those shoes and really fill a huge role, that's going to be a big gap. But I got to tell you, anytime you see faces light up, the way I have seen faces light up about Chris Owens, it tells you that you're in for some good things from the future. And anytime you bring up his name, there are smiles coming out of Tuscaloosa and out of that football locker room. That only means one thing. This guy's going to be a pretty good player, and people are actually rooting for this kid and his career on the football field.
I wanted to also ask you about the guard position for Alabama. We've talked about the bookends. You got Jedrick Wills, you got Alex Leatherwood, incoming freshman Evan Neal, who a lot of people are excited about. But returning at guard, you have Deonte Brown and Matt Womack potentially. What do you like about Deonte Brown? Let's start with him, and also talk about Matt Womack. I think a lot of people forget that he has a lot of experience, but dealt with the foot injury last year. So let's start with Brown and then work our way to Matt Womack.
Yeah, Deonte Brown's one of those guys that when he plugged in last year, I really thought he was a huge upgrade. And it's not that I didn't like Lester Cotton. It's that I thought Deonte Brown's ability to move laterally, he's not as powerful as Lester Cotton was, really going, head up, really driving people off the ball. But he can move laterally. He can pass off twist games, which you're going to see a lot of people this year on defense will try to attack Alabama's offensive line in that way. They'll run the ET stunts and the TE stunts. So Deonte Brown and his ability to move side to side and really take on some of those bull rushes, I thought he was pretty good. Now, obviously, you have some questions about the suspension during the playoffs and what that will mean moving forward. But if he is given a chance to play, I fully expect that he is going to be one of the starting 5, and then he'll actually flourish in that role. And I think that actually having a guy like him playing the left guard position could really help Chris Owens at the center position moving forward because he's seen some snaps. He knows what to expect. He knows what the speed of the game will be played at, and he can plug in next to him and really just kind of calm things down. On the other side, when you do have Matt Womack, he has a lot of experience as well. Now, a 6'7" guy, a guy as big a frame as he is, I think really you don't see a lot of guards that play at that height just because leverage becomes a big deal and because getting up under their pads from some of these nose guards and 320, 330-pound defensive tackles that you see, they're allowed to kind of get up under a guy's pads that is 6'7". It's hard for a guy like Matt Womack to have enough knee bend to play at the guard position, but he's a big body and he knows his way around the offensive line. So I think if given the opportunity that he'll plug right in there at right guard. Now, I think the beautiful thing about this situation is that you have so many guys that can play so many different positions. Jedrick Wills has seen time at guard. Alex Leatherwood, obviously, a guard. Matt Womack has seen time at right tackle. Jedrick Wills can, play a flip tackle spot, and he's also played a little bit of tight end, as has Matt Womack on the goal line. So at the combinations, you move some guys around, you slot some guys in, you slot some guys out, you see how the freshmen are doing. But I think the best thing to put forward here is that Alabama's going to have options. When Kyle Flood puts in as the offensive line coach and he goes in that meeting room, Alabama's going to have options. They just have to find the right 5 piano keys to press all at the same time, and hopefully they'll be able to find that group throughout spring practice.
One more lineman that I want to ask you about. When we're talking about linemen that can switch different roles, Alex Leatherwood, guy that can play tackle, guy that can play guard. What did you like about him last year? What do you feel he needs to improve on going into this 2019 season?
Well, I think when you're long like Alex Leatherwood is and you have that arm reach, sometimes you do catch yourself leaning in. Younger offensive linemen, they tend to use their face too much. They don't like to use separation. Alex Leatherwood has long arms, and I think that really during his young career, he has displayed the ability to use his legs, use his butt, really get low, and use his arms for separation. Sometimes when you get plugged in and you're young and you're playing a guard position like he was in his second year last year, you get bull rush, you stick your face in, you get hit in the face a lot, and it's bad technique. You're setting yourself up for a swing move, for a spin move, all these other things on the interior of the offensive line. Alex Leatherwood was impressive that he didn't get caught in many bad situations like that. He did get bull rushed. He allowed himself to kind of sit down and use his physicality and use his length, and didn't get caught with his face in there too many times. Myself, I used to do it all the time. I used to lean in on my face. Barrett Jones and I always had those issues back 10 years ago now. Chance Warmack was another guy would tell you, leaned in with your face too much. Alex Leatherwood's one of those guys that he has all the physical tools. It's just mentally getting yourself to use that length and really get distance and separation from the guy in front of you. And for a second-year player, I thought he displayed that very, very well last year. I was impressed with the technique he had at the right guard position.
As we move forward, talking about questions that we need to see answered in spring ball, kind of bouncing around each position, we're now talking about the running backs, and a position that, it's running back you here at Alabama. And this coming year, you return Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Jerome Ford redshirted last year, the two incoming guys, Killian Robinson, Trey Sanders. It has to be Najee Harris's year. You got to expect a breakout year for Brian Robinson, but who's going to be that guy that's going to take the reins, really continue this legacy of imposing Alabama physical running backs?
Well, I think the easy answer is Najee Harris. Listen, if I said anybody other than Najee Harris, this would be blowing up. People would be going, "What's this guy talking about?" Najee Harris, obviously, you expect big things from him, but we've seen the past few years, and really ever since Derrick Henry left campus, you've seen so many different names in the backfield, so many different guys get plugged in to different situations. You might even see, two different guys from Bama's backfield last year get plugged into the, probably the top 2 rounds when it comes to the NFL draft this year. So who's going to be the guy that backs up Najee Harris? Who will be that second string guy? And I think this is a really interesting question as far as spring practice goes, because you do look at Brian Robinson, you do look at the 5-star signee and Trey Sanders. Mm-hmm. Both big body kind of guys, obviously a ton of upside, and you expect them to flourish, but both very similar in stature to what Najee Harris brings to the table. So I do think you try to get a look at Jerome Ford. Keelan Robinson will be a guy I will have my eyes on to see exactly how electric he can be. But you have to find somebody that's different, somebody that's a change of pace. I think the beautiful thing about last year is that all 3 running backs that were utilized had a different style. Damian Harris is one of those guys that could go side to side. Josh Jacobs can run you over. Najee Harris was one of those guys that could get on the perimeter, stick his foot in the ground, find a gap, and fall forward for 7 or 8 yards. So who can bring that different dynamic? Who can pick up blitzes on third down? Who can step into the screen game and catch balls out of the backfield? That's what we need to pay attention to throughout some of these spring practices and throughout the A-Day game to figure out going into fall camp who really will be the favorite for some of those roles that you expect to see in the backfield in this Sarkeesian offense.
When we break down a player like Najee Harris, if you look at his game film, he reminds me of Derrick Henry. Do you feel the same way in terms of the speed, the size, the power that he has when he has the football in hand? I've never seen Derrick Henry leap over players like Najee does, but in terms of a similarity, would you agree with that?
I think they're very similar. Not only that, I'll go a step farther, and the football mind that I work with watching them play, I think they enjoy similar types of plays. And what I say when I look at that is Najee Harris and Derrick Henry both enjoy plays on the perimeter. And it's not that they have a ton of speed, but they understand how to read blocks. When you're running the stretch schemes, the outside zone schemes, getting pullers out in front of them with kick out blocks, they understand how to get outside the hashes, get towards the numbers, and then be patient. And then you get a kick out block, and then you put your foot in the ground, and then you go up the field. I think that not only do they have similar running styles, Najee Harris runs with a little bit more knee height, I think, than Derrick Henry, at least does now. So I really like that about Najee Harris's game. But I think in terms of game planning, in terms of X's and O's, you really, you see both those guys really enjoy similar play styles, similar plays that they really feel like they can be good at and getting things out in front of them. Some guys, and Josh Jacobs is one of these guys, they like the quick hitting plays, the A-gap plays, the B-gap plays. A lot of times when you see big body guys like Najee Harris, you say, oh, an A-gap play, he'll fall forward and get you 3 or 4 yards in a cloud of dust. That's not so much his style. I think he really enjoys allowing things to develop out in front of him, and I think that's really where he is going to be a benefit for this offense.
He's Mike Johnson. My name is Kyle Henderson. I'm the managing editor at BamaInsider.com. Mike Johnson's helping us out with our analysis this springtime, so be sure and follow him on Twitter, MPJohnson79. I'm Rivals_Kyle. All the coverage back on BamaInsider.com as we move forward with 5 questions we need answered during the springtime. Steve Sarkeesian as the new offensive coordinator. Last year, Alabama's offense averaged 522 yards per game, 322 passing per game, 198 yards rushing. It was incredible last year. With the guys coming back this year, does Sarkeesian need to really tweak anything? What are you expecting to see? What are you watching from the offense as we move forward into the 2019 under Sarkeesian?
Yeah, one of the things I was impressed with last year was Michael Locksley's ability to, each week, it seems like you got a new look. You got some kind of formation. There's a split back with a wide receiver or somebody in at the H-back position, or you're always getting a different look. You got Jalen Hurts involved in the game plan in the offensive backfield. he did a really good job moving people around. I think that's going to continue under Steve Sarkeesian. And what I really think is very interesting is when you look at the Atlanta Falcons last year, really the last couple of years, their talent bed, really, they have a very similar structure to what Alabama has right now. They have 3 elite wide receivers, Mohamed Sanu, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, a couple of other guys that can really mix it up. I think you see that depth at Alabama at the wide receiver position right now. And Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman in the backfield for the Atlanta Falcons the last couple of years, utilized in different roles, but that's what you're going to see under Steve Sarkeesian this year at Alabama. So I think you will see some single back runs. I think you're going to see a lot of shotgun with Tua, flank to his right or left. So you're going to get the zone schemes, inside, outside zone schemes. But you also will see the split back. You saw that last year with the Atlanta Falcons a little bit. They even put Calvin Ridley in the backfield for a number of snaps. You saw Austin Hooper, the tight end, kind of cutting back across formations, blocking out on defensive ends. I think Steve Sarkeesian will carry over a lot of what he used with Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons and just say, hey, Tua Tagovailoa is not going to be asked to run a ton. This is not what style offense this is. But we do have a lot of depth at the wide receiver positions, and utilizing guys like Jalen Waddle and guys like Devontae Smith and making sure you're getting the most out of those guys. I think that's what Steve Sarkeesian is going to be used for this offense. So while I believe Michael Locksley did a great job last year, and obviously you just named off the numbers, some record-setting, eye-popping numbers, I think that really Steve Sarkeesian will bring a different dynamic in making sure that he is utilizing everybody from the top to the bottom of this offensive roster.
When you have so much talent on the offensive side of the football like Alabama does, it was surprising at the end of the last season to see that they had struggles inside the red zone. Now, they lose Irv Smith, who declared early for the NFL draft, looked fantastic at the NFL Combine, by the way. This year, they don't really have a tight end that's proven yet. There's some guys, obviously, that are capable, but none of them proven yet. In fact, not one tight end returning caught a pass last year. When we talk about the red zone improvement under Sarkeesian, what are you watching when we just look at the red zone and kind of give us an overview of, not really of a collapse last year, but how Alabama could improve with the red zone going forward?
Yeah, and really the Atlanta Falcons struggled in the red zone as well. They were very good between the 20s, but when you got to the red zone, that's really where Steve Sarkeesian started having hiccups. Everybody looks at the yardage ranking for the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL last year, and they say, oh, well, they're top 10 in yardage. Well, they weren't quite there in points scored, and that's because when they got to the red zone, they faltered, very often last year. And I think, Kyle, to me, the misnomer about red zone offense, too many times you look at guys that have length, guys that are tall, and you say, oh, that guy's tall. He's 6'6". We put him in the end zone, he's going to be a red zone threat. Doesn't always come out like that. I'm going to be really focused on the likes of Jalen Waddle, and here's why. I think that Nick Saban knows you have red zone issues. Steve Sarkeesian knows you have red zone issues. You look at a guy like Jalen Waddle, and I really do see him in like a Julian Edelman style of role of, cutting back into formations, cutting out, finding a way to settle down in the middle of the zones. And really more so than linked in the red zone, you got to have quickness. And that's exactly what he brings to the table. Not only him, but Jerry Jeudy as well, running out of those, slot pieces on, in the red zone. Too many times you get to the red zone and you say, oh, we'll put 2 wide receivers and we'll, a couple of backs in the backfield with a tight end. You don't so much need that. I think really you're going to see a little bit of difference with Alabama's offense this coming year. We're spreading guys out, keeping 4 wide receivers on the field. Steve Sarkeesian, although they did have red zone struggles last year in Atlanta, he was not shy about emptying the backfield on 3rd and 2 in some of these different situations. So who can really get open in small windows? You're operating in small spaces. I do look at a guy like Jalen Waddle and say, you know what? That's a guy who is a mismatch problem no matter who you're playing against. And I think Steve Sarkeesian will find a way to get him the ball in the red zone this year.
I mean, you look at the wide receiving unit, it's incredible. I mean, Jerry Jeudy returning Biletnikoff winner. Henry Ruggs, who, by the way, was just clocked at a 4.2 at Alabama's junior day, which is unbelievable. You have Jalen Waddle, as you mentioned, caught for over 800 yards last season. Then Devontae Smith, a guy that, not a lot of people talk about, but he's just as incredible as the other guys. So those 4 wide receivers, certainly incredible. And then I'm kind of curious myself to see what Terrell Shavers does this year, Xavier Williams, see if those guys could even get in the field. And I think they will, maybe even a Slade Bolden. I want to see those kind of that underneath depth as we move forward. Rounding out as we move to question 5 on questions we need to answered in the springtime. The last one revolves around Patrick Surtain, and he had an incredible freshman season. Really blown away by his play. According to Pro Football Focus, his coverage grade overall was 76.5. Not bad for a true freshman. What do you need to see from Patrick Surtain this coming spring? Where does he need to improve? What type of defensive back corner is he?
Yeah, I think I don't want this question or answer to get misinterpreted. I'm obviously he is an incredibly skilled player. I was very, very impressed with his true freshman campaign. But as you look towards the rest of his career, and really I think Alabama's only got him for 2 more years. I think that he's a guy that has the length and the speed and the physicality to head to the NFL after year number 3. So what do you need to see out of him the next couple of years? And really, his true freshman season, I don't think it was quite what Minkah Fitzpatrick was in whose true freshman season. And that's what I really think that you want to see out of a Patrick Surtain. Can he become a lockdown corner? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. He has the speed. He has the hips. He has the feet. He has the length with his arms. I think just getting a year into the system under Nick Saban and understanding where his help is and understanding where he should be forcing the players that he is trying to lock down, I think it will help him tenfold. I really, when you look at guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, and really from a measurable standpoint, I go all the way back to my career in a 5-star signee. We had Alabama and Dre Kirkpatrick, who is still playing very well in the NFL right now. Long, quick, but didn't quite understand the defense and what he needed to do as a true freshman. Now, I think Patrick Surtain definitely had a better true freshman season, but really going to the next level, understanding that you're on an island at sometimes, understanding where your help would be, where the blitzes are going, where the safeties are playing. I really think the communication last year was really lacking in terms of this defense as a whole, and that kind of played off on Pat Surtain at times, and you really saw some game plans try to go at him. His grade was nice, but you still saw game plans in different teams really try to go at Pat Surtain. So can he take that next step forward during spring ball? I absolutely think he will. And there's for me as a player, Kyle, anytime you look at spring football, people say, oh, well, you get better when you're on the field. It's not always the case. Sometimes players get a lot better when they just have a chance to think about what they were being asked to do, or when you're laying in bed and you're staring up at the ceiling and you say, oh, man, that defensive call on that 3rd down and 10, I should have been doing this instead of doing that. That's what he's been doing the last couple of months. And now he'll get a chance to head back onto the field and show off what he's seen on film, show off the work he's been doing in the weight room, show off his speed and coverage skills. I expect a huge leap for Pat Surtain going into spring ball, and I cannot wait to see him get to showcase his abilities.
A lot of returning guys in the secondary. Xavier McKinney, who was the MVP in the Orange Bowl, Daniel Wright, Trayvon Diggs, Shaheem Carter, right? He was a interception touchdown machine last year. So a lot of guys returning. Carl Scott and new defensive secondary coach Charles Kelly will be working with those guys for the 2019 season. He's Mike Johnson. My name is Kyle Henderson. This is BamaInsider.com. We're breaking down Alabama football every single day on BamaInsider.com. If you're curious to get behind the paywall, if you're interested for the nuggets, head on over to BamaInsider.com. Look for the free 30-day trial. Promo code at checkout is simply Roll Tide. We will have a call-in show as we start having the pads popping. The call-in number will be 205-686-3604. You can pepper Mike Johnson with your Alabama football calls. I can't wait to see that, right? I can't wait to host the calls and feed them over to you. It's a great community, and we thank you for following us on our YouTube channel. Be sure and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And again, all the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. Be sure and follow Mike on Twitter, MPJohnson79. Follow me on Twitter, Rivals_Kyle. We'll catch you next time. We got a great week of coverage. Stay tuned for a ton of recruiting coverage, especially from Andrew Bone. And he's back. He's refreshed from his bachelor party. So I'm looking forward to it. He's getting married. Mike Johnson's getting married. Tony Sukalis is getting married all in the next couple of months. I'm going to be flying the ship solo at BamaInsider.com. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good time, man.
Enjoyed it, buddy. I'll see you next time.
All right, and we'll keep killing it right here on BamaInsider.com from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and from beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. We're coming to you on BamaInsider.com. Catch you next time. Thanks.